What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tesla Geek Show. I'm Eli.
And I'm Anwar Beck. On this week's episode, we talk about the highly anticipated robotaxi event from 8.8 being moved to 10.10 and speculate a little bit about what's going on at Tesla with the robotaxi project and new leaks of the Juniper Model Y and what we think about that and more.
All right, man, it's good to be back with you on the Tesla Geek Show. We've had a couple weeks off. We've both had a lot going on, but we're here now, and I know we got a lot to talk about, but before we dive in to getting into robotaxi, its delay, and everything else in this episode, I want to let everybody watching know who's in the Southern California area that if you're anywhere near Santa Monica, that's just outside of LA, on Saturday, come down to the Tesla store on Santa Monica. I believe it's Santa Monica Place. I'll put the address in the description. We're going to be giving away 500 limited edition copies of an Adventures of Starman comic book. People can get photos with real life Starman. They can get a free book. All you got to do is come to the store, register, come hang out with us upstairs and get your free copy. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of people coming out. And this is truly the launch of a new chapter for both Starman and Tesla together.
That's a good segue, dude. Everybody is doing this. I think we set the scene for the robotaxi event. The delay is basically going back to the annual shareholders meeting that took place. I can give kind of a recap since I was there in person. What I took out of the shareholders meeting, essentially, Elon was basically saying, this is not a milestone. This is not, opening a new chapter. He basically was like, we are closing the book of like this first phase of Tesla and opening a whole new book. In the future, if you want to summarize what he said, he basically was alluding to the fact that robotaxi, which during the shareholders meeting we thought was happening on August 8th, that's a $7 to $8 trillion valuation. Tesla today, end of July, while we're recording July 31st of 24, is roughly like 700 and something $billion valuation. So Elon is basically saying in the next, 3 to 5 years, we're going to get to $7 trillion valuation. A lot of that's going to be these like crazy revenues that we get from robotaxi. And then he also talked about how the next phase after robotaxi would be the Tesla bot. He said Tesla bot utilizing, some of the lessons learned from FSD and the AGI required to get us to that point is we're going to have these autonomous, robots that will be working in manufacturing plants, helping around the house with like small tasks. He said that's a $25 trillion valuation. So he's throwing around numbers like right now, the most valuable companies in the world are like $3.5 trillion. So he's kind of like, forecasting out into the future, saying Tesla will be the most valuable company in 3 to 5 years, will be worth $7+ trillion. And then outside of that, we're going to have the future is even brighter, right? We're going to go to this 25 trillion, these unheard of valuations, basically. So that's generally like what the setup was. And then a few weeks later, the robotaxi event gets postponed, right? I think there was a Wall Street article. Somebody like broke the news externally, and then a few. I don't think Elon didn't come out and say immediately that it was moved, but then a few days later, they basically said yes, the 8.8 is being postponed to 10.10. What did you think, Eli, of that announcement when you saw that?
So, I actually was surprised at the 8.8 announcement in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding was that the vehicle wasn't really there for that unveiling. And it was also surprising to me that they would do that unveiling with the current build of FSD beta. It's progressing, but nobody's looking at FSD beta, I think, honestly, unless they live in the San Francisco Bay Area, where we know now it's been optimized for with its training data, can honestly look at it and say, yeah, we're going live in robotaxi this year. Like, it's progressed, don't get me wrong. But going 50 miles without intervening is one thing. This thing's got to go 50,000 miles without crashing.
Right.
And that's an entirely different other. So I'm actually glad to hear they delayed that event. because you only get one chance to unveil these products, right? And you get one chance to make an impression. And this isn't even a product for the consumer, really.
In
This
the
is a
beginning, for
product
sure.
for Tesla to deploy and, you know, basically provide a taxi service. So if it's going to be exciting, the robotaxi unveiling is for the investor. It's not
Right.
for the customer. So the product needs to be in a really solid place if it's going to have the right impression on the investor and the right impact on the investor, and the investor go, yeah, I'm happy my money's here, versus go, you know what, you're betting the future of the company on this, and this is all you got to show. So it's like you've got one chance with this. If this is the all-in moment on the new chapter, the robotaxi unveiling a video has to go off without a hitch.
Yeah, dude. Sitting there in person, I was gung ho, right? When I heard Elon talk about these valuations, I mean, Elon is a great salesman. And again, you guys know, like, we're super fans. People joke if Elon had a fan club that I'd be president, right? You'd be right there next to me. But like, so me saying this, don't take this the wrong way, but like at the event, he hyped me up, he pumped me up. And then when I had a day or two to think about the messaging of what he said, and again, going back to, he said, hey, this is not a new chapter. I closed this book. To me, this book meant like the EV, the evolution of EVs, Tesla's, the mission, pushing sustainability. It kind of seemed like he said, hey, we're closing this book, and opening a brand new book, which is this like robotaxi and autonomy. But I've been invested in Tesla for over 10 years and hope to continue to invest for the next couple of decades even. I kind of was a little bit, it seemed like by making bold statements like that Elon was almost like gambling, or, like in options when you take out like a 2-year leap where there's like a time element to it. It seemed like he didn't have to, but he was like, by saying, hey, check out what we're going to do. But it almost seemed like he like started this clock that he didn't need to start. And now you're absolutely right. This is not for consumers of Tesla, the vehicles. These are like big investors, right? He said, watch what we're going to do in the next 2 years. To me, I was like, oh God, like there's all this risk now. And it took me back to, was it 4 or 5 years ago when Elon was really sure we're going to be able to drive autonomously from West Coast to East Coast. Was that 4 years ago? Maybe even longer.
So the first time I am aware of Elon making that claim and it being documented was in 2016, that they would complete a coast-to-coast drive without human intervention by the end of the year. And we heard that repeated 2016, 17, 18, 19. And then I think starting in 2020, he kind of changed it to it's going to be complete by the end of the year and stopped making the specific coast-to-coast drive.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time.
And then the last one, the second time that he said it was 4 years ago, right? And it almost seemed like he'd say, hey, it's a year from now. And 4 years later, we're still not anywhere near that, even with the latest FSD, 12.5, right?
Yep.
So as somebody who's like a very devout, investor, somebody that wants to continue to hold Tesla long term, I'm a pretty conservative guy. Like I dabble in options, but my whole thing is just buy and hold. It's like the dumb investor, right? Like I know that I'm not going to be able to beat these like PhDs and quants and supercomputers, but I do think, hey, give Tesla like a 5, 10, 15-year window. Of course, this company is going to do great things. And that's where like, it almost seems like Elon is gambling or betting with options with and where he doesn't have to. But part of me knows that he's doing this to motivate people within the company to be like, hey, it's like, it's Elon's burn the ship moment. And that's where like me being conservative and looking out for maybe my best interest as an investor, thinking, hey, like Elon, why did you burn the ship? We didn't have to.
We didn't need to do it. Yeah.
But why do these, generals, your thing is, there you go. But why do these generals basically give no retreat to their soldiers, the burn the ship moment? It's because it makes a difference on how people move forward. So I know for a fact this was Elon's burn the ship moment. He basically wants everyone in the company right now, from what I hear from my friends that work at Tesla, this is like cost cutting mode. He's basically everything is Elon is back. Like there is no, I mean, he's on Twitter and X, but like from what I understand, like he is 100% like paying attention to what's going on, all the costs and all that. But basically the next 24 months is super critical for the company. So I'm kind of torn. Like, piece of me thinks, hey, and I know all of our listeners would agree. Like, nobody listening to this that knows a little bit about what Elon and Tesla are doing doubts that robo-taxi is going to happen eventually. We can sit here and argue that 2 years, 5 years, 5+ years, like most likely. I mean, I would be shocked if in 10 years we don't have like fully autonomous robo-taxis, right? We all know where things are heading. I think the argument at this point is basically like, by saying what he said, this is how I'm understanding it as an investor and a Tesla. He's saying, I'm going to dedicate all manpower, all capital, everything into FSD and robotaxi. Everything else is going to take a back seat. So that's the affordable, Model 2 or whatever, the $25,000 vehicle. That could even be an expansion of gigafactories around the world. We know that he's like, there's like, we're pausing things at Giga Mexico, which was supposed to be that like where we built this whatever Model 2 vehicle. So by burning the ship, Elon is saying, hey, we are going to focus all of our attention on robotaxi. We're not doing this half-ass shit, basically.
Here's my take on this, and there's a lot of components here you just spoke about. One, burning the ship can be an effective strategy, and especially in war, right? Because when you burn the ships, your soldiers' lives are at stake, right? They literally fight their way through the enemy, or they die in the ocean, back against the water. In this case, the only difference I would say is the employees aren't going to die if Tesla doesn't succeed in 2 years. Elon may not, but will bear the responsibility if that doesn't happen, not any of the employees. So like, it is a good rough analogy, but the conditions aren't exactly the same. Like Tesla is a successful company. They're profitable. Like you said, they didn't need to set this artificial timeline to keep the company going and keep investors hanging around. Like Tesla can continue as Tesla's only at like a couple million cars a year. That's going to end up at 10 million cars a year over time. They're going to have a very successful, very profitable business. They're the only reliable charging network. They don't have a monopoly on charging, but they're the only charging that's any good. So if you actually care about charging and care about your experience moving around in a vehicle, it's Tesla. Tesla's got such a first mover advantage and such a moat in so many ways that you're totally right. It didn't have to be we're taking an all-in call option on the company on robotaxi. Now that said, if you guys, if anybody watching or listening has read the Isaacson book about Elon, he talks about in there that basically Elon feels most alive when he's on death ground. When his back's against the walls, when he focuses the most, he works the hardest. He gets that like high level of like kind of manic energy, and that's where he's most effective. So I would say that this move of burning the boats is for Elon even more than necessarily the company. Because he's most effective at that route. Now, if he can pull this off in this time frame, he will have proven to be a genius and be correct. The benefit of hindsight will be if he doesn't pull it off, it's going to become a story about when Tesla lost half of its market cap because they overpromised and underdelivered. And that's where you get into trouble with timelines. When you set unrealistic timelines to investors will punish you with their dollars by pulling their dollars out. Now that said, internally, in engineering, if you give engineers an infinite timeline, they will work for infinity. They will over-engineer forever. So the need for, you're an engineer, you know how this works. So the need for a deadline is necessary. But balancing the need for internal deadlines and external shareholder accountability and responsibility becomes a lot more challenging, especially when you go from, Tesla's not a $5 billion, $10 billion company anymore. They're a $700 billion company. So the stakes are much higher. Tesla's going to pull off autonomy eventually. The robotaxi will happen. I think in 2 years' time, will require a miracle that hasn't yet happened.
Yeah. And then let's talk a little deeper about robotaxi stuff. I think this is like, I'm assuming most of our listeners, or these are things that we're interested in at this point. Hardware, right now, all the vehicles coming out have hardware 4, correct? And at some point in the next year and a half, we're going to start to get hardware 5. My understanding is that, like, I think hardware 4 and newer are going to be the hardware cameras required for full autonomy. I don't know if I'm like is that correct? Like, but there are a ton of, I don't know how many of I think a good chunk, like 80-90% of the fleet that's out there, 5-6 million cars are hardware 3 and lower, right?
Our cars, aside from your Cybertruck, we're using hardware 3, which has, I believe, 1.2 megapixel cameras.
Yeah.
The new cameras are 5 megapixel. Like, here's the reality. If they could have gotten to autonomy with 1.2 megapixels, like really believe they can get to, level 4, level 5 full self-driving, they wouldn't have spent the money to upgrade to 5 megapixels. Yeah. Tesla is all about affordability, cutting production and manufacturing costs to make EVs as accessible as possible. Mm-hmm. They would not put unnecessary hardware, increase any part of the vehicle cost by even a penny if it wasn't necessary. Now, for the hardware 3 owners out there, and I know a lot of people are concerned because Elon has said they're not going to retrofit people to hardware 4, I wouldn't be so worried about that right now. I don't think they're going to retrofit people to hardware 4 because I think people on hardware 3 are going to get a straight skip through retrofit to hardware 5. My prediction is hardware 5 is going to be the cutoff that is going to be required for them to actually get to L4 autonomy.
Mm-hmm. But that's the other, like, I think we talked about this on the podcast before, but James Duma, the white paper type thing that he wrote, this idea of we're going to push, there'll be a certain FSD where we flip the switch and all of a sudden all the fleet of Teslas are driving like robo-taxi style is not going to happen, in my opinion. It's going to take a bit of time, I think.
And look, it's a nice concept. It's a nice way to explain to people how it could theoretically work. There's one piece in particular that makes that impossible. Regulatory.
Yeah.
You have to get regulatory approval in each different region and their own different laws if you're going to go to true level 3, level 4 autonomy. To say, yes, the human driver is no longer responsible for what happens with this vehicle because they are not driving. The vehicle is driving. So Tesla's going to be, I think, 100% certain on this. And if anybody wants to take bets on this, I will happily do it. San Francisco Bay Area is going to be the first market that goes online.
Yep.
The regulatory structure is already there. Waymo's already operating. Other companies are already operating. That market's ready to go. There are markets across the country that are still working on regulatory framework. There are some markets that have actually put laws in banning autonomous vehicles in their jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And until that changes, you can't flip that switch on there. You might be able to push people out the software, and it may work phenomenally, but it will still be limited to a level 2 where you have to monitor it, even if it's capable of more, because the regulatory is not going to allow it. Yeah. And then the other part of it, you probably know more about this. What are the potential legal implications of when somebody suddenly has an autonomous vehicle that they own, but they want to rent it out to a robo-taxi fleet? Like, how does that work for taxes? How does that work for liability?
You become a business. You become a business. That's the other part of it that's not as simple as people think. I mean, imagine. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's okay that these things are more complicated or going to take more time. Like Tesla the stock and Tesla the company and the vehicle that all of us like own and love, or at least most of us in this community who talk about Tesla, there's Yaman and a few other people that like to yap on about the stock and don't actually own the car. Keep that in mind, by the way, guys, when you listen to people who talk about the company and talk about the products. If they don't own it, why are you listening to them? Anyway, back off my soapbox there. The company we love and the products we love are entirely different from this coming product, really. Like Robotaxi is really a commercial solution. What's going to be fantastic for us is if we even just get to have autonomy for our own cars, even if we never get to lease it out. Like how many people in the community, their primary car, are they really going to put on the Robotaxi network and let get destroyed? Like you've seen the way people treat Ubers and taxis, and like think about the way people treat the bus and the train. That's how they're going to treat your car. Like there's no human there to hold them accountable. Your car's going to get like destroyed.
When we publish this, let's go ahead and do a poll on X and ask the users and see, because if this is a yes or no question, for me, I would not put any of my vehicles on the Robotaxi network. I even like back in the early days, I Turo'd my Model S, and I think a handful of times. And the final time that the straw that broke the camel's back, the Model S came back. These guys like they couldn't charge it, so they had to tow it somewhere. And there's all this stuff where I'm on the phone remotely trying to help these people because they messed up and didn't charge and didn't manage the charge correctly. And then the car comes back, dude, and there's Red Bull all over the back seat. Like, it's just like, it's Red Bull. Like, it's like sticky. You know what I mean? That's when I like throw up my hands. So how long, when you put your own vehicle, people are not going to treat it like it's your own. I mean, we all go, even with Ubers, when there's somebody there, we treat the car a little bit different than your own. So if there's no supervision in these vehicles, they're going to, like, the wear and tear is going to be aggressive and very, very, extreme, in my opinion.
It will be. And let's say even further the difference between Turo and getting in like an Uber Robotaxi. When you rent on Turo, you're paying a couple $100 a day, right? Mm-hmm. You've had to provide your ID, you've had to provide your credit card. If you crash the car, you're going to be legally responsible. Like, they've got mechanisms to go after you. Yep. If you mistreat a Uber, you just get banned from the Uber app. Yep. And somebody can call your car for $20 and have like very little money in and just be having a bad night or be just an asshole and wreck your shit. And they can just hate the fact that that they don't like Teslas. Yep. Just put a knife in your fucking seat. And, people are going to counter this and say, oh, well, there'll be a camera. Camera does not really do much to disinhibit people's behavior, because a camera sitting there that they can't even really see does not feel the same as the person in the car who may come around there and kick your fucking ass. Yeah. It's you're not going to want your personal vehicle on there. And I think we're going to get a larger percentage of people who are going to say yes to the poll that we're going to put out about this than really will, because just in theory, be like, oh yeah, I'll Robotaxi my car, until like the first friend of yours that Robotaxis and gets their car destroyed. It goes, I'll never do it again. And then you go, oh man, maybe I won't do that. And we have the unique perspective of you've Turo'd your car. We're both friends with Ryan at Kilowatts. He runs like a fleet of vehicles. His personal vehicles are not the ones that like are on the network. That's his fleet. And he rotates between them. Like, I know that business. Like, it's tough on cars.
Mm-hmm. It will be interesting. I'm excited to see what Tesla announces about the self-cleaning. I'm assuming the cars will have some sort of like spray or something, right? Like what do you call it? Like to disinfect the car and all this kind of stuff. Tesla will have to figure out a way. But at the end of the day, I think the model is going to be more like Tesla owns a shit ton of these Robotaxi cars and they manage it themselves. The insurance aspect, we didn't even talk about. That's a huge thing. How do you clean and maintain these vehicles? The charging. I mean, there's a lot. I think that's the argument, is like there's a lot more to it that we can get to in the next 2 years. So,
love Tesla. Love the brand. The brand is fantastic. Elon going all in on autopilot is not representative of the larger part of the product and the company that we love so much, right? Like, here's one of the pieces. When you talk about there's a lot that has to be done. Mm-hmm. Until Tesla is going to superchargers in a market and changing these charging cables that a human being has to manually grab, until they start replacing superchargers with robot arms that will automatically plug into the car, Robotaxi isn't ready.
True.
If Robotaxi was going to be ready next month, we would be seeing 6 months ago Tesla starting to retrofit superchargers to prepare for this. Because what good is a Robotaxi that you can't autonomously charge?
Yeah, dude, that right there is it. You don't have to talk about anything else.
And I love Tesla. Like, just be fucking honest with ourselves, guys. Like, autonomy is the most difficult software problem we've ever solved to date. Mm-hmm. We haven't solved it yet, really. Like, Waymo's got it, but like in regions, Tesla doesn't have it yet at all. Like, and I don't want to hear in the comments you guys being like, oh, well, they've solved it. It's just not regulatory approved. If it was ready for regulatory approval, they would have already submitted it by now. They're going to get there. It's just, we got to stop with these unrealistic timelines. Like, or don't. And you're going to like, don't hurt yourself as an investor, guys. Like, your money's like, that's real, man. Like, that's going to like how you invest your money is going to affect the rest of your life. Yeah. So just be rational, be realistic. You can love Tesla and still keep your feet firmly on the ground.
Yeah. it's it sucks to say this, but and again, this isn't financial advice. Whatever that disclaimer is, Eli. But maybe the thing is that like there's going to be some sort of pretty decent pullback when we can't show these insane results over the next 24 months. And, things like we have like a come to Jesus type moment for the company. And then after that, I think like by 2030, in the next 5-6 years, we're probably going to be much closer to that beginning point of robotaxi. And maybe it takes the next 5 years. So from today, I'm talking like 5 years where we're kind of like at the beginning point of that. And then it's not going to be an instant overnight thing. It'll take us basically 5 years to ramp the robotaxi to where it has a meaningful effect on the bottom line of Tesla and its revenue.
Yeah, and that's like totally okay. Tesla's got robotaxi coming out by 2030. As a shareholder, I'm stoked.
Yeah.
Yep. And being realistic also doesn't mean you have to go sell your Tesla shares. Nobody's even asking people to do that. But like, hey, be looking up to it. Like if you're long term and you're just like, accumulating. Yeah, patience. Like remember how many years you held Tesla before Tesla had a run? It's a long time.
Yep.
Tesla started in 2008. They didn't have a true stock run up till what? 2019, 2020?
Mm-hmm. And I get asked all the time, is this, should I buy Tesla? Is this the right time? And my answer is I have a patented answer now, or like if it's Tesla, if you need the money you're going to invest in the next year or two, run away from Tesla. It's literally the worst company, in my opinion, when you have a short timeline, because you don't know. There's so much out there. But if you think you can hold it for 5+ years, 10 even better, Tesla, I think, is a great investment. So that's kind of what I tell, friends and family or whoever asks me. I'm like, it depends on your, timing, basically.
Here's my equivalent to that. And my advice to people is do not trade the Tesla stock. Tesla stock is so unpredictable. It moves up when it should go down. It goes down when it should go up. It lags on news. It eventually breaks out 6 months later. It is not a tradable stock. And like you said, if you're going to need the money in the next couple of years, potentially, it's not the company to buy. Because the worst thing you want to do is happen to buy at like, maybe a multi-year high, have it go down for a couple of years and be forced to sell something that the price it might have recovered. You're buying Tesla, you better have a 5-year horizon at least. Yep. That's not financial advice, but if you've looked at the history of the company, it definitely is not a very good short-term play consistently. Yep.
So we've been talking about the long term. I want to switch topics a little bit and talk about something that's coming up, I think, in the next 6 months or so, which is the Juniper Model Y refresh. It seems like earlier today or yesterday, we had some leaked breaking photos of the Juniper Model Y. Did you happen to see that, Eli?
I saw it just before the show.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, the little rear of the vehicle reminded me a bit of a different car brand, which was pretty interesting to see.
Yeah, that's kind of the first time we've seen Tesla kind of a little bit of a copycat situation going on.
Yeah, we'll see if what we've really been shown, if that ends up in production. But man, if they do follow through with that, they will be accused of copycatting. Somebody they don't consider as a pet competitor. I mean, look, I guess they say follow the leader, but Tesla's the leader in electric vehicle sales, hands down. So I hope what they would do as a final thing is still consistent with what we've seen with the Tesla brand and Franz's design prowess.
I feel for people that are, I have a few very close friends that are in the market for a Model Y or new car, basically, right? So they're stuck in this predicament of and Tesla's been pushing the 1.9 APR, right, interest. They're trying, and we know that the inventory of Model Y is increasing. It's kind of the Osborne effect. Like Elon, I think he said, we're not doing this year, but it almost sounds like it'll be imminent. It'll be the first part of 2025, most likely. I bet January we'll start to see it in China, and by February, March, it'll start to hit here in the US. So if you buy one between now and end of the year, you're basically getting the very last of the. And the thing that sucks about Tesla, unlike the other automakers, Tesla doesn't do just aesthetic facelift type design changes usually it's like engineering, like between the old Model 3 and then the new Model 3, the way you close the doors, the dampening inside. I mean, there's a lot of like things that make a difference that they change, right?
In many ways, buying a Tesla is buying a computer as much as it is buying a car, right? Mm-hmm. Every year, a new graphics card comes out, and it's better than last year. And in a computer, if you just wait for the next model forever, you'll never have a computer, literally. I bought a 4090. It is a monster. It is a step change of a graphics card. Mm-hmm. Guess what's coming out now? It's the 5090. The 5090 is like 60% more powerful than my 4090. Then I paid like $2,500 for it. It's going to be the same price. So like you kind of just have to like choose and make the jump and just buy the car. And so long as you're buying it for any substantial period of time, regardless of what Tesla you get, is fantastic. Yeah, I bought a 2019 P100D Model S, and for like $40,000 less, I could get a Plaid today, brand new. Did I make a bad financial decision? An accountant might say yes, but I would tell you no. Yeah. I've been driving electric for years. I've had that computer. I've had this car. I've gotten to have all these experiences in that I couldn't have had otherwise, and I would have just been sitting at home twiddling my thumbs, being sad because I didn't want to pay the price of gas. Yeah.
So this friend of mine, his name is Jesper. He said something interesting to me right before the podcast. I ran into him, and he was like, "My wife and I have come up with an interesting solution to this dilemma." So he's like, "We don't have to choose the current Model Y or the Juniper. So what they're going to do is get the latest refresh Model 3. And eventually they want to get another car. That'll be the Juniper." That's probably the smart approach, because the 3 was refreshed, like 6 months ago. So we've had time for it to kind of do its thing. And the refresh Model 3 is awesome, dude. I've gotten the test drive of the vehicle. The performance one is like a monster of a car. Lots of value. So that's another option. If you're out there kind of in this predicament, if you can, I think buying a Model 3 at this point, you're probably safe for the next, 2 to 3 years probably.
Yeah, and if you're somebody who's super worried about it, buy a used Model 3 or Model Y. The price discount on those things, you can get like a decent Model 3 for like $15,000. You can get a Model Y for like $20,000. If you're worried about the model change and depreciation, buy a used one.
That's what, dude. Like
used fleet, man. Like they're you'd be like for $15,000. It's kind of dumb to buy anything but a Model 3. That's like seriously.
Yeah. I'm actually going through this myself right now. So when I got my Cyber Beast, I had a Plaid X, so I transferred that to my wife, and then my wife was driving a long range Model Y. So now I've got to figure out a way to like offload this vehicle, but the pricing has dropped so much. I'm pretty sure. I think we bought the Model Y a couple of years ago, like almost 3 years ago, for 53. I want to say 54, and now like I'm looking, the values are like 24 to 28,000. That's in.
So here's what happened over the year window you had it. You bought it right before Tesla had to begin the deep price cuts. Inflation rose. Let's be honest, demand did not continue growing at the same rate that it did. Variety of factors. They continued to drop price to counter that.
Yep.
There's not any further for the price to drop. Like, unfortunately, you kind of got wrecked a little bit on this one.
Yeah.
But like, that's the risk we take buying cars, but it didn't go out in your favor.
No.
There's other people who bought. Remember when the vehicles were going up for a couple of years in price? They bought for like 50 and it worked its way up to like 70 and stuff.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's just you got to take the L. You got to take the 20K or extra 15K in loss. But any one that you're buying now, there's literally not any lower for the vehicle to go. Like Tesla squeezed these vehicles cost down so much that for Tesla to do something innovative from a price point at this standpoint takes a new model vehicle like the Model 2. And they know that. That's why Model 2 was on the roadmap until to be a soon product until very recently when Elon made the shift to go all in on Robotaxi.
Yep.
So even they know that they've squeezed like there's probably a few pennies still left, but they've been squeezing pennies for years.
I mean, with the $7,500 tax credit, if you qualify, right, when you subtract those from like cars that are in the low 30s or mid 30s, it comes down to like mid 20s or high. You know what I mean? So like, we kind of already have that vehicle, especially with like all the now like with inflation, right? Like the $25,000 vehicle we talked about, whatever 4 or 5 years ago, it is like a $30,000 vehicle today, probably. And that is like Model 3, Model Y once you take the tax credit out of it.
So the big deal with the $25,000 vehicle is once you take the tax credit out of it, you now have an $18,000 vehicle. Okay. I mean, you're competing with a PT Cruiser.
Yeah.
like what?
On that Ford. No.
Yeah, you are competing at an even larger market, right? That's the base of the pyramid for new vehicles.
Yeah, below 20,000.
Yeah, below 20,000. So like, the only reason our streets aren't flooded with $20,000 vehicles already is we have tariffs against China, right? They would wreck our auto market if we didn't.
Oh
do
my
something
God,
to stop
dude!
That. We wouldn't have an auto market.
BYD,
Tesla would be the only company.
It'd be Tesla and BYD. I mean, and again, like I had this conversation recently with somebody. We've talked about how probably in the next 5-10 years, what happened to the mobile phone market is going to happen to the automobile market. It'll be this like, names that we know very well are going to go out of business. The General Motors, Fords of the world, Audi, name brands that today we can't even imagine them not being around. I think it's going to happen. And it could be that like Tesla becomes the Apple iPhone equivalent and BYD is Samsung. And those two control 90+% of the market. I think that's probably where we're heading.
I mean, we are just the companies that are like, I think Ford will survive. GM's in trouble. I think BMW will absolutely go out of business, in Europe. There's going to be a total reshift of the auto industry because they will literally not be able to ever catch up. And they have so much outstanding debts like GM does that they shouldn't be solving already. It's only because of government backing they're even still alive. Mm-hmm. Their failure to move to EVs to really commit beyond making press releases and making a handful of cars, they're not going to make it.
Mm-hmm. And it'll have to be like robo-taxi will have to be a big part of these companies' revenue stream. If it's BYD, Tesla, whoever, right? It's not just going to be based on selling vehicles, in my opinion.
So that's one that I bought a Tesla. Originally, I bought my first Tesla in 2017 specifically because of autopilot. That is what sold me. I love the green energy bit of it. The speed is fantastic, but why I bought it, really, why I went from like a $7,000 car to like a $120,000 car. Dude, huge jump. I didn't even need a nice car, but I needed autopilot. My only way to get autopilot was a Tesla. And then I fell in love with the brand. I found out about the community, and it took over my entire life. That was an accident. But autopilot is why I bought the car. So I preface that by saying, I actually don't think autonomy is going to be a major buying factor for customers as people think it's going to be. I think driver assists and advanced driver assist will be, but I don't think autonomy is going to carry the premium with the individual consumer the way people think it's going to. Okay. Would I pay $50,000 to have an autonomous feature on a car? I've got the money for it, so maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know, questionable. And I'm on the person who's obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Most people are using cruise control still and basic lane assist, and they're fine.
You may be right, because imagine a future where right now every adult in a household has to have a vehicle, especially if you live in Texas or whatever, right? I think we're heading towards a future where instead of a 1-to-1 ratio of if you're an adult that can drive, you have a car, probably every family has one vehicle. That, again, it's not even about the autonomy. It's for flexibility, basically. You have this, and you share that vehicle among people in the family, or a husband and wife share one vehicle, and then everything else we will have. If you're going from point A to B with one other person, the little robo-cab, like a small 2-seater, will come. If you and your family are being transported from one place to another, we'll have some sort of massive van that's a robo-taxi equivalent van, right? I could see that being the future. So maybe you are right, where autonomy for a vehicle that I would own or my family would own maybe isn't as important.
And look, if you got let's say the classic situation, the classic American family, right? Breadwinner, homemaker, right? There's the sedan that the guy's going to work in typically. There's the SUV or van that soccer mom shuttling around the kids. You know, that's a large number of American households. Just to be honest, like, this isn't sexist. This is reality. And how much more is soccer mom and, you know, single income, 2-parent, 2-kid family willing to really pay for the benefit of autonomy? Like, is that mother not going to go with her kids and drop them off at school? Probably not. And we're talking driving around town, right? Like, how much does that really change your life to have autonomy?
Or,
not really. You know what I mean?
the breadwinner or whatever, the mom and dad goes to work, and then the other partner calls the car back to the house, uses the car during the day, and then it gets sent back to whoever needs to come back. That's another option.
Potentially,
Maybe
but
autonomy enough to where like it can come back to you.
Let's think about that. So it depends on how far you're commuting, right? So if you live really close, sure. In fact, if you live really close, you can just drop your partner off at work and pick them back up. Let's say the case where they actually live far and it's a commute. Okay, you're commuting an hour and a half, 100 miles, let's say. Are you going to drive to work, and are you going to really put an extra 200 miles on your vehicle every day just so it can be summoned home and pay that energy and pay that that charging cost? Maybe, but how quickly does that become $20, $25 a day just to move your car back and forth from work and back to then be the shuttle vehicle at home? Like, you know, $20 a day, 30 days a month, they're having some substantial amount of money. That's another car payment.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, like, there will be use cases for all of these different niches within how you can use autonomy. But are they going to individually be massive markets for consumers? Not as a personal vehicle. I think the world is coming where, like, you know, maybe not my kid, but probably the generation after her will probably be comfortable not owning vehicles and just using a robotaxi service. But then we're no longer talking about personal ownership of cars. We're talking about robotaxi as a form of public transit. Like, then we're talking about robotaxi as a replacement for the bus. The difference is this bus works just for you, and the other bus takes 40 other passengers.
Right. Yeah. I don't know, dude. I feel like it could be our kids' generation that will not be owning vehicles.
Yours is newborn, though. Mine's 9. So she's already gotten past the age of seeing that you own cars, you drive cars. She's 5 years, 6 years away from driving one herself. So she wasn't young enough. When the switch hasn't happened.
Right.
At best, she's going to be 11 when the switch happens.
Yeah.
Most likely, she's going to be like about to get her license for the first time. So she'll have grown up with driving a car, or at least owning a car that is driver assisted, because both I have a Tesla and her mom has a Tesla. So it's pretty much her only. This is a wild one. My kid has pretty much only grown up in a Tesla.
Yeah.
She was like a newborn, like when I switched. So she has no memory not moving around in a Tesla. So it will be an electric car. It will be a driver assisted car. It will probably be a Tesla. Tesla Rivian. I don't know what brand it'll be by then, but she's gonna own a car. It's what the culture she grew up with. But your son, he probably won't.
He's 13 months. So even give it 10 years for us to figure this out. He's a teenager in 10 years, right? Not driving age. We're gonna have, in my opinion, robotaxi or autonomy figured out by then.
Yeah. Man, this has been a fun discussion. I feel like we got to talk more at length about autopilot, its potentials, its markets, and maybe we'll do a space. Should we do a space Thursday night? Sure. Have everybody on to extend this conversation.
This would be an interesting conversation to have with people, for sure.
All right, guys. Thursday night, 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 Central, 10 Eastern. We're going to be hosting the Tesla Geek Show after show space, and we're going to be focusing specifically on autonomy, and let's get into the nitty gritty of its future use cases, the detail, where it's going to work. But let's ask ourselves critical questions. Let's find the problems that Tesla's going to have to face, because if we start figuring those out now, we can help them get ahead of them when the time comes.
Definitely.
So put your critical thinking hats on Thursday. And until next time, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back for more of the Tesla Geek Show.